Hello, everyone. Welcome to Buddhist Center. Awesome to see all of you. So wonderful that we can be here tonight and talk about the stages of the path, the stages of a path that gets us to a destination that we would all love to get to, a place where we never have suffering ever again and have the highest amount of happiness possible. And this path that we're going to learn about tonight is one that leads every being at whatever level they're at in stages to that level of perfection and to that level of happiness that we all really seek when we're honest about our day and we talk about what it is that we think the purpose of life is, the meaning of life is, why we do what we do, why we go to work, why we, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. It's all to be happy and to be free from suffering. And tonight we're actually going to learn about something that produces those results in a way that they never end and always allow us to abide in that state that we crave over and over and over and again and never seem to be able to get to. So let's make the best use of our time together. Let's make it as efficient as possible. Let's make it as powerful as possible. Let's make it have the most maximum benefit it possibly can have. And we know that the most beneficial attitude for ourselves and others is the mind that aspires to enlightenment. It's the only entrance into the Mahayana vehicle. It's the only thing that, when combined with the wisdom realizing emptiness, can make us a Buddha. It's a ripening path that blows us right away from the abiding nirvana where the hearers and solitary realizers abide and can't really be the most reliable guides. It blows us away from that place and takes us to the place, those winds take us to the place of complete enlightenment where we're the most reliable guides in the universe and have perfect power, perfect love and compassion, perfect skillful means, perfect wisdom. So the way that we can make the best use of our time right now and make it as efficient as possible, make it the most maximum benefit it possibly can be, is by generating the mind that aspires to enlightenment and saying that I'm here in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings, setting this motivation in our minds that not only do we want to free ourselves from the sufferings that we have to endure day in and day out, and not only do we want the maximum amount of happiness possible, but wouldn't it be so nice if we were the most reliable guides in the universe and could show every single sentient being simultaneously, without any kind of problem doing it, exactly how to achieve what it is that we want to achieve, and be able to give them reliable information because we would have achieved a state of perfect wisdom and perfect compassion where we would want to give them the most reliable information. And because of the perfect wisdom, the omniscience of a Buddha that we will eventually have, we'll know exactly what information to give them. We'll know exactly what it is that they need because we'll have figured out exactly what we need. And we know that all of our minds are in the nature of clear light and unsullied. Every single sentient being's mind has the potential to ripen to the state of full awakening, to the state of Buddhahood. We all have Buddha nature. We have a natural Buddha nature, which is the emptiness of our mind, which allows it to transform. And we have the proliferating Buddha nature, which are the actual states of mind that we can mature into the states of perfection. The love that we have in our mind that isn't mature, the compassion that we have in our mind that isn't mature, the ethical kind of states of mind that we have that aren't mature. We can eventually take those states of mind by relying upon causes and conditions that produce better states of them to the state of perfection, to the state where they can't evolve any further. And that's what a Buddha has done. A Buddha has removed all of the afflictive obstructions and the obstructions to omniscience that keep him or her from being the most reliable, happy guide in the universe. And that's what we're going to try to do tonight. We're going to try to make every moment of this teaching count by trying to make every moment be motivated by a desire to become Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. First, a desire to become Buddha, saying, I want to become a Buddha. I want to achieve the highest state of happiness I can. I want to be free from suffering forever. And I want to achieve that state for the sake of all sentient beings, because it's through reliance upon sentient beings and it's through demolishing self-grasping ignorance and the self-cherishing attitude at its subtlest levels, at its levels of stains, that we will evolve. So before we get started, let me recite this prayer from the Prayer of Noble Conduct, the Samantabhadra dedication, which many, many teachers recite before teaching, which invites all beings here to be our guests. Imagine that we're inviting all beings to be here to be our guests, and that we're thinking of them in terms of inviting our loved ones here, and then inviting our strangers and neutral beings here, and inviting beings we have difficulty here. And we know that when our minds start to feel a difference towards sentient beings, this sentient being versus that sentient being, there's a bias that's being created. And the Buddha doesn't have bias in terms of who he or she feels love for, who he or she feels compassion for. No matter what kind of being that being is, the Buddha has compassion and loves them as much as they love anyone else. And this is the kind of mind that we need to mature our minds into, and eventually have it to the state of a perfect kind of love and compassion. But we don't get to perfection. We don't get to the best at something by just jumping. We have to have the little bits of better that we get, little bits at a time, through the stages of the path, by using the mirror of the Dharma. We have to just use those little bits of better to try to evolve. So those little bits of better that we can work with are things like meditating on the 7-point cause and effect for realizing the mind that aspires to enlightenment, meditating on equalizing the exchanging self with others. And we'll see our evolution when we do these practices. And we'll see that when we do the exercise that we're doing right now, and we start to invite all beings in the universe here, all sentient beings in the universe here that have any kind of afflictive obstructions or obstructions to omniscience, that strangers are easy to fill a stadium of, friends are easy to fill a stadium of, but when we think of difficult people, or even difficult people on the news maybe, when we think of them, something happens in our mind that points at our bias. And this is what we have to get rid of if we want to be the happiest being in the universe. If we want to have what the Buddha has, if we want to have that kind of bliss, that bliss comes from loving everyone equally. That bliss comes from having compassion for everyone equally. That bliss comes from seeing sentient beings struggling and knowing that you know exactly what to do for them, as opposed to feeling helpless. And that's just amazing. So let's invite all sentient beings here to be our guests, in the language of the gods, nagas, and yaksas, in the language of demons and of humans too, and however many kinds of speech there may be, I shall proclaim the Dharma in the language of all. Lai ge dan lu dan no jing ge, zhu bon da dan mi ge nan dan, zhe wa gong ji zhan nan ji zang ba, dan che ke du da ji ju den do. So now we've imagined that we bring all sentient beings here to share with them this teaching. We're practicing what Buddha does. We're practicing for the big game. The big game is when we're a Buddha and we can actually do these things that we're imagining. But until then, we need to practice. We need to lay the tracks in our mind that are concordant with that result that we're seeking. And if we don't do that, we can never have the ripening result that we're looking for. Like I said last week, if we want to make chocolate milk, we need to have all of the ingredients, put them together and mix it, and then we can have chocolate milk. If we're leaving any of the things out, then we're not going to come up with that result that we're looking for. Likewise, if we're leaving anything else out in the pathway to Buddhahood, we won't be able to achieve that goal that we're seeking. It will be just words. And unfortunately, a lot of folks could waste a lot of time with improper instructions. So we're so fortunate that we have the really pure Dharma passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni through the Nalanda tradition, to all the way down through these authentic Tibetan masters that have passed it down to us and put it in our laps, like His Holiness the Dalai Lama and Geshe Dorje Damdula and Umsala Geshe Aga and Geshe Gompala and Kensur Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, of course. Just put it right into our hands and said, this is how you do it. So we imagine that we have all of these sentient beings here with us who are being able to ripen, who are being able to hear these teachings that they need to hear, just like we need to hear them, in order to figure out where each and every one of us personally are on the path, and then get going and start moving and start really maturing our minds so that we aren't having to suffer day and night, so that we don't have so much uncertainty and eventually we will never have uncertainty again. So now that we have all sentient beings here as our guests, let's invite the merit field here. Generally, we say, let's get into the 7-point Vairocana posture. This is a good posture that tells us, okay, now we're getting into a posture that is conducive to meditation, conducive to creating the most clarity of mind that we can possibly have, conducive to sitting for long periods of time. And if we are in the most conducive physical sitting posture, for us to have clarity of mind, then we can make the most accurate assessment of our mind at that moment. So we know we've done everything physically we can to get to the most clear place in our mind. So if you choose, get into the 7-point Vairocana posture, and let's begin to invite the merit field. Let's imagine that all of the enlightened beings start to fill in into the space in front of us, and they're looking into our eyes with immense loving kindness, compassion, looking at us just like, oh, just like when someone adores you, the way they look at you, when you're feeling, oh, this person adores me. This is how you think about all of the enlightened beings looking upon you, thinking about Buddha Shakyamuni being right there in the space in front of you, looking into your eyes with immense love and kindness, knowing Buddha Shakyamuni came to this world 2,600 years ago out of incredible love and perfect compassion, showed up here with perfect wisdom to show us exactly what we need to do in order to not have to suffer so much, in order to not have to be so worried all the time. As Janja Rupi Dorje says, we've been worried for so long. We just worry. This is a worrying mind that we have. And Buddha Shakyamuni came to this world to show us how to end that, how to have a complete peace. Buddha Shakyamuni is in the space in front of us. His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the Buddha of compassion, is in the space in front of us on a Vajra throne. Imagining Khenser Geshe Wandak Rinpoche, imagining Geshe Lobsang Gompo Rinpoche and Demolocha Rinpoche, Khenser Lobsang Gyatso, imagining Geshe Dorje Damdula Umzala Geshe Aga, Jeffrey Hopkins, Lama Zopa Rinpoche. Any beings that you consider holy enlightened beings here, right here in the space in front of us, raining blessings down on us, allowing us to open our minds up just enough to be able to see the mistake that's in there, that's causing us all of our pain over and over and over again. These teachers are so kind to cater these instructions to our needs. Imagine the beings of the extensive deeds lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Maitreya and Asanga, and Basu Bandhu, and Dignaga, and Dharmakirti, and Vimuktasena, and Haribhadra, and Shakyaprabha, and Gunaprabha, and Lama Salimpa, Lord Atisha, and Drone Tompa. All these holy beings are in the space in front of you that we've been so affected by and will be so affected by. And by relying on their teachers, we will become perfect. We will become unworried people by relying upon their teachings. Imagine the beings of the profound view lineage passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni to Manjushri, and Nagarjuna, and Buddha Palita, and Chandrakirti, and Aryadeva, and Shantideva, and Baba Vega, and Chandrashita, and Yanagarbha, and Kamalashila, and Lama Salimpa, Lord Atisha, and Drone Tompa, all in the space in front of us. Imagining the beings of the lineage of blessings passed down from Buddha Shakyamuni, Vajradhara, to Saraha, Matripa, and Tilopa, and Naropa, Lotsawa Marpa, Jetsun Melrarepa, Jagam Popa. Imagining Drone Tompa, that amazing lay practitioner that Atisha was looking for and finally found in Tibet. His root disciple, he had a vision of Drone Tompa, the lay root disciple, passing down the Lamrim lineage to the old Lamrim masters, the 3 Lamrim traditions. Imagining all the holy beings of the Nyingma lineage, Padmasambhava and Longchenpa and Mipam, the Kaju lineage, the Karmapas and Jagam Popa. Imagining the beings of the Sakya lineage, Sakya Konganimpo, Sakya Randawa, the Sakya Panditas. Imagining the beings of the Galupa lineage, Lama Tsongkhapa, Kirtubje, Joseph Basuchuji Jetson, Panchen Sonandrapa. Jayan Sheba, Purbajo, Jetsumba, Janja Ruby Dorje, Gonchu Jimmy Wampo, the 7th Dalai Lama. We are all so blessed and affected by these beings. It's amazing. We're so, so fortunate. the highest yoga tantra deities, performance tantra deities, action tantra deities, all of the 35 Buddhas, all of the protector deities, all of the beings are in the space in front of us, looking into our eyes with immense loving kindness, compassion, just looking into our eyes like, what can I do for you? How can I help you? How can I help you to understand the truth of suchness so that you can liberate your own mind? Because the Buddhas do not wash away negativities of beings, not with water, nor do they remove miseries by taking it away with their hands. They can't transfer realizations to you. We'd already be Buddhas. Buddhists have immense loving compassion for us. They can't transfer realizations. It's by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. How? By applying the teachings of the stages of the path to their own minds and evolving to the state that the Buddha came to show us how to evolve into. Now, imagining that we have all sentient beings here with us and imagining that we have all enlightened beings in the space in front of us, just so that we connect with these beings, so that we leave these imprints within our minds, so that we open up imprints from our previous lives that may have connected to these various masters. And just by hearing their name a 50th time, suddenly we start to understand what the Madhyamaka Autonomy School, the Middle Way Autonomy School is talking about, the Middle Way Consequence School is talking about. We hear these names and suddenly these books that were seemingly so difficult to read are a little bit easier because of the blessings of hearing the name and it connecting to an imprint in our previous lives when we studied their texts, leaving an imprint in our minds and our future so that we can study their text, so that we can evolve. There's no evolution of our minds without work, without putting in specific practices that will allow for that evolvement. It doesn't just happen out of nowhere. We can't just spontaneously become enlightened with such a complex mess of a mind like mine. There must be some kind of complex solution that will combat this complex problem of my mind, which is called self-grasping ignorance, that sees everything in the universe as inherently existent wrongly, that adds something to everything, myself and all phenomena that isn't there. And I perceive it through my senses, not just my mind, wrongly. So everything that I'm seeing right now, I'm seeing with a little bit of wrong. And this must be undone. So how is such a thing undone? How could this misperception be undone? It's by relying upon the knowledge at the second turning of the wheel of Dharma. We have to rely upon all of the knowledge of all three turnings of the wheel of Dharma. But the liberating path, the thing that will cut the root of cyclic existence, the thing that gets rid of our self-grasping ignorance, is the knowledge that was taught at the second turning of the wheel of Dharma. The Heart Sutra is a condensed version of the Perfection of Wisdom Sutras. That knowledge that was taught there is the liberating path, is the only liberating path, is the only correct view. All of the other turnings of the wheel of Dharma need this view added to it in order to make them complete practices. But the other turnings of the wheel of Dharma are necessary to add to the second turning of the wheel of Dharma, to know exactly how to evolve, to know exactly how to understand the truth of suffering, origin, cessation, and path, and know exactly what this thing called Buddha nature is. This is what we come to learn about, and this is what we must know if we want that thing we're talking about, Buddhahood. We want to be free from suffering and have the most amount of happiness possible. We have to know about this. We have to know about all three turnings of the wheel of Dharma. And we really, really, even if we want to achieve a lesser, the abiding nirvana of the hero solitary realizer, Theravadan tradition, the abiding nirvana that's talked about, even if we want to achieve that without this liberating path that's taught in the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge, without recognizing that everything, all phenomena lack inherent existence, lack intrinsic existence. There's nothing from the side of the object that can be inherently, even conventionally designated. It's just from the subject. And we have to come to the terms with this idea that everything we're experiencing is coming into being in our minds through the power of our minds. Not that there's nothing out there, but the way that we're relating to everything around us is concealing something. It's concealing the lack of inherent existence at all times. It's veiling it. It's covering us. So the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge comes to tell us, and this is something that takes decades to understand. This isn't something that you just read once or twice and you say, oh, it just sounds like this or it sounds like that. This is something that requires an intense amount of study, pre-information. When we look at the way we understand the final view of emptiness, we have to go through the other ideas of selflessness that the Buddha taught at the second turning of the wheel of Dharma and at the third turning of the wheel of Dharma. Because all of these things get us to be able to get to the top of the staircase of the view, which is the middle way, Madhyamaka Prasangika view. But without going through the understanding that things are, not permanent, unitary, or independent. There's no permanent, unitary, independent self. The beginning of the Buddha's teaching on selflessness. There's no autonomously, substantially existent self that the Buddha taught in the next kind of level of selflessness. There's no, and then the Buddha talked about, there's emptiness of externality. There was the Chitta Mantra mind only view. And then the Buddha teaches that there's no true existence, but there's inherent existence. And that's super complicated, but it's right before you get to the final view. And until you get to the final view, there's still something that's left over that's too much. There's still something that doesn't exist in the object, in some object. And without going through all of that and seeing the possibilities of things existing by way of their own entity, character, defining characteristics, without going through all of these ways that they could exist through their own defining characteristics, they could truly exist, we may miss something and think we've arrived at a view we haven't. Because the Madhyamaka Prasangika view is very complex and is very subtle and walks right on the edge of nihilism, but does not let you go there if you've realized it right, as it says in Lama Tsongkhapa's three principal paths. If you can't see the functionality of karma and results and Four Noble Truths and all of this within the understanding of the nature of reality, if you can't see the aspects of the two truths and how they function as one entity, then you haven't understood the view. So this thing that we're looking for is very, very subtle. It gets us away from absolutism, from this view of permanence, and it gets us away from a nihilistic view. Because we say that subjectively things exist. There is a self. All of you out there that are teaching, stop saying there's no self. Stop. Stop it. There's no car. If you're going to say that, say there's no car either. And there's no, there's no inherently existent self. But there's certainly an existent self. I'm talking to you right now. Right now. Here I am talking to you. The Buddha isn't saying this is all just a dream. And then we just wake up and there's nothing. It's like a dream because we're believing that there's something objectively real going on and it's really subjective, like a dream. You're in a dream, you don't know it's a dream. You're like, wow, this is all really happening. But when we wake up, we're still having a problem. And we're thinking that everything around us is appearing from its own side. So there's an existence that's happening, but there's a subjective existence that's happening. It's not a dream. Cause and effect work great. In dreams, cause and effect don't work so great. You could be in Texas and then, the next minute snap your fingers and be in Italy. Things don't work like that in the conventional reality. But it's like a dream in the sense that we see everything coming from objectively real in the dream. That's a real car I'm driving. It's from the side of the object. Well, when we wake up, we still see everything coming from the side of the object. We don't think it's coming from the subject. We have to make a slight correction because when we subject this object to ultimate analysis, it's not the thing that we think it is, isn't findable. Existing from its own side, when we start to try to find it in its parts, separate from its parts, it's not findable, this inherently existent thing that exists from its own side. This is what the Buddha came to tell us in the Heart Sutra, that we are apprehending everything. Things are appearing to us in a way that's wrong. All the time, 24/7. We don't ever get a break. This is how we start to get a break, is by understanding what the Buddha meant, but not saying things don't exist, not saying that we're just in some kind of a dream that we all need to wake up from. We need to stop believing that things exist from their own side independently from a designating consciousness. That we need to stop. But we don't need to stop believing things exist conventionally, because then we fall into nihilism and karma, results, Four Noble Truth. None of it makes any sense anymore. Things only make sense when we're talking about conventional truth. Ultimate reality is just looking for one thing, to see if things inherently exist or not, if they're ultimately there from their own side. That's all ultimate analysis is doing. And when you realize emptiness, you just realize a non-finding. That's it, nothing else. You realize that that's not findable. And you have an experience because you've never thought that inherent existence wasn't findable, because it just appears that way all the time. You've never thought it wasn't findable. You've just always believed it and never even really thought about it being something to be findable or not. But then when you start to look at your mind, you'll see that this thing that you should probably look for, if it's not there, is causing you a lot of problems, because it's making you value things that, if they're just subjective, you're the market. You're the whole market. Yeah, you're just making it up. Yeah, we're all just making it up. But we're only making up the fact that there's inherent existence and that these things are pleasurable or not pleasurable because they have inherent existence, or worthy of our attachment or not worthy of our attachment, because they have some sort of findability from their own side that makes us really jazzed up. And it's that non-finding that allows our minds to not have that hum of dissatisfaction, because we're dissatisfied with something that could never satisfy us, because it doesn't exist the way that we think that it does. Nothing. We don't. Our friends don't. Our house doesn't. Our car doesn't. Our new egg chair doesn't. Nothing exists the way that we think that it will, that it does. And it's from this grasping at things as being inherently existent that we say, oh my gosh, that egg chair, I got to have it. It's really, really good. It's going to make all kinds of difference in my life. Or this car, or fill in, as Jeffrey Hopkins Genla says, your own madness, whatever yours is. Whatever it is today that you thought that if I do this, this is going to be this is what I need to do to make me happy. Or taking your vitamin, not saying don't take care of your body, but there's certain things that you do in your routines that you think, okay, this is how I find happiness and balance. But if you're in samsara, there's no happiness and balance. It's fake. You're lying to yourself the whole time, because you're concealing something about everything that is a problem. You're concealing something about everything that could show you that everything is just even. Everything is even. The sharpest points are even in emptiness. The dullest thing is even in emptiness. The hottest thing is even in emptiness. The coldest thing is even in emptiness. So this is, whatever that means, is what we need to come to find. And it's not something, as I said, we are going to come to find this evening, but we're leaving the imprints in our mind to start to say, wow, this makes sense to some degree here. I mean, even science is saying things are subjective nowadays. They're saying that it's coming from the mind, and that if there's no observer, there's no observed. They're saying things like this. They aren't landing on the Prasangika view, but they're in a staircase. They're on a staircase to emptiness. If they just, because all we're trying to do is have our minds tally with reality. So if they're starting to see that things are more subjective than objective, their minds are getting closer to tallying with reality. So that's what the tenet systems are all about. Loosening. We start at this, tenet system of the Vaibhashika school. That's the closest thing to the ordinary world. There's a bunch of stuff in there that's like, don't worry. There's truly established this, and there's these atoms, and they're undivisible, and your whole world does make sense. It's just you're relating to wrong. You think you're permanent Unitarian independent, but all this other stuff, it's fine. Your relationship with it's a little bit of a problem, but it's all out there the way that it looks. And that's the safest thing the Buddha could do for his introductory teaching in the Four Noble Truths, is to kind of give this idea of the realization of the Four Noble Truths and the 16 attributes of the Four Noble Truths, and this Arya path that only an Arya knows about is what gets you to Buddhahood. Because it started at a place that was palatable, and it gets more and more rocky in terms of, well, then what's there? What do you mean? Well, what's here? And the Buddha didn't start there, but the Buddha ended there with, this is a real concoction you have going on here, and your neighbor's in on it, and the worm in your yard's in on it. This concoction, because there's externalities made somehow, wind, karma, all of us, collective karma. There's a bug in this room somewhere I don't see that's responsible. Anyway, the Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. So before I recite this, as I always say, we say explicitly, this is a teaching on emptiness. What does emptiness mean? Empty of independent existence. If something is empty of independent existence, then it's dependent. It's dependent origination. If something's dependent, it's not independent. All emptiness is saying it's not independent. Emptiness of independent existence. That's all we're trying to get at. Emptiness is just shorthand. Emptiness of independent existence. It means nothing exists independently. It means that everything's dependent. It means everything's dependent arising. That's what we're getting at. We're not saying there's no self, just saying there's no independent self. You see, when we say, oh, there's Buddhism just says no self, and they're, yes, we're saying that under ultimate analysis, but ultimate analysis isn't looking for, it doesn't have any business stating whether there's a conventional self or not. It's ultimate analysis. That's not its business. So when we say there's no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, that's saying that when we subject it to ultimate analysis, we find that those things are empty of inherent existence. And when you realize emptiness of inherent existence, you're just realizing a non-affirming negative, nothing else whatsoever. So you lose the object. There's no eye, there's no ear, there's no tongue, there's no body, because you're not focused on that. There's no car in the, I don't know, just think about it. You're not focused on that. You're focused on whether there's something an inherently existent car, an inherently existent eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, speech, mind, an inherently existent one. That's what you're looking for. That thing doesn't exist. You're not looking for car. eye, ear, nose, tongue, body, speech, mind, appearance, sound. You're not looking for that. You're looking to see if that inherently exists within its parts or separate from its parts. Within its temporal moments, within its where it sits in space, the basis of designation, is it there? Is it something outside of it? You're just trying to find out if something inherently exists in these things. And when you find a non-finding of an inherent existence, of course there's no eye, no ear, because you're just finding that there's not something. That there's not something doesn't say, and there is conventional, but it doesn't say, but there is conventional reality, because conventional truth is analyzed by conventional analysis. So this is tricky stuff. This isn't easy, just tick-tock talk quick, I learned for a weekend course or 1-year course, and let me tell you about the nature of reality. This is 30 years later, and I'm still studying everyday emptiness, every single day for hours. And I wouldn't still be doing that if it didn't have an effect now, would I? I'd have to be an imbecile. The Sutra of the Heart of Transcendent Knowledge. Thus have I heard, once the Blessed One was dwelling in Rajagriha at Vulture Peak Mountain, together with a great gathering of the Sangha of monks and a great gathering of the Sangha of bodhisattvas. At that time, the Blessed One entered the samadhi that expresses the Dharma called profound illumination. And at the same time, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, while practicing the profound Prajnaparamita, saw in this way. He saw the 5 skandhas to be empty of nature. So here, saying that the 5 aggregates are empty of inherent existence. And this is something that shakes up everything people have heard before, because now we're saying that it's not just the self of person, this non-associated compositional factor that is selflessness that can't be found under ultimate analysis. But we're saying that nothing can be found under ultimate analysis to exist inherently. So the Buddha came to give this groundbreaking information to us, which is the only liberating path, which is the only thing that can cut the root of cyclic existence. No matter where you want to land, if you want to land in abiding nirvana, in this extreme of peace, or if you want to be able to achieve the state of Buddhahood, a non-abiding nirvana, one has to realize the lack of inherent existence of all phenomena. Self of person, self of phenomena. And self of person, self of phenomena exists. What? It just doesn't inherently exist. Ear, eye, nose, tongue, body exist. They don't inherently exist. The object of negation isn't the eye. It's an inherently existent eye. It's not the ear. It's an inherently existent ear. It's not the nose. It's an inherently existent nose. That's not the object of negation. No nose. Nose isn't the object of negation. It's just shortened for ultimate. Under ultimate analysis, there's no nose. And then we look at it conventionally, there's no intrinsically existent nose because we just subjected it to ultimate analysis and we've not been able to find it objectively. So then when we come out of ultimate analysis, we know something exists there. I'm talking to you. Jeff exists. What's the mode of existence? Well, we just found out the mode of existence isn't objective. So what's that mean? Subjective. So this is where you land after your ultimate analysis. You don't understand conventional truth until you understand ultimate truth. We think we do. We're like, oh, this is conventional stuff. This is conventional truth. But, oh, you mean like all this stuff you're projecting that doesn't exist from its own side? Is that what you're talking about? All this stuff. When you say, oh, I'm just dealing with conventional truth, is that what you mean? Like, oh, I'm just dealing in a world that I'm projecting that doesn't exist from its own side, that's merely designated independence on a basis of designation? Is that how your conventional reality is operating? No, because we haven't realized ultimate truth. We haven't realized that things don't objectively exist, that they don't exist from their own side, right in the object, established by way of their own defining characteristics, established by way of their own entity, really, really there. We haven't realized that. And what else we haven't realized is how to traverse the paths. We haven't realized how to want to get out of samsara. We haven't realized how to generate the mind that aspires to enlightenment. And without generating the mind that aspires to enlightenment, we won't have even started the other part that's hidden in this sutra. And those are the five paths: the path of accumulation, preparation, seeing, meditation, and no more learning. That the bodhisattva starts when he or she gets bodhicitta and becomes a bodhisattva. So we have a lot of work to do, but it's work that when we do it actually provides a result that's lasting. Then, through the power of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, how should a son or daughter of noble family train who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita? Addressed in this way, noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, said to Venerable Shariputra, O Shariputra, a son or daughter of noble family who wishes to practice the profound Prajnaparamita should see in this way, seeing the five skandhas to be empty of nature. Form is emptiness, emptiness also is form. What that means there is it's talking about conventional and ultimate truth, just so you know that there's this one same entity, different isolates, ultimate truth, conventional truth. When we look at this chair right here, within that entity, there's ultimate existence, ultimate truth, which is that it's empty of inherent existence, and then conventional truth, chair. So all items at all times are cruising around with this emptiness of inherent existence we never see. When I say see, I mean literally, our eyeballs are seeing inherent existence. We never see the emptiness of inherent existence. Only the Buddha, through sensory perception, is able to see the emptiness of inherent existence. All of us have to see emptiness directly, have a yogic direct perception of emptiness, and while we're in it, we're not seeing things as objectively existent. But until we're a Buddha, unless we're seeing emptiness, everything's still going to sensorily appear as objectively existent, appearing from its own side. And this is why it's only the Buddha who's the most reliable guy in the universe, because it's only the Buddha that's, when dealing in conventional reality, can see that it's not inherently existent through his eyes or her eyes. Emptiness is no other than form. Form is no other than emptiness. In the same way, feeling, perception, formation, and consciousness are emptiness. The Shariputra, all dharmas are emptiness. There are no characteristics. There is no birth and no cessation. There is no impurity and no purity. There is no decrease and no increase. Therefore, Shariputra, in emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no perception, no formation, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no touch, no dharmas. No I dhatu up to no mind dhatu. No dhatu of dharmas and one consciousness dhatu. No ignorance, no end of ignorance up to no old age and death. No end of old age and death. No suffering, no origin of suffering. No cessation of suffering. No path, no wisdom, no attainment, and no non-attainment. Therefore, Shariputra, since the bodhisattvas have no attainment, they abide by means of Prajnaparamita. Since there is no obscuration of mind, there is no fear. They transcend falsity and attain complete nirvana. All the Buddhas of 3 times by means of Prajnaparamita fully awaken to unsurpassable, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the great mantra of Prajnaparamita, the mantra of great insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra that calms all suffering, should be known as truth, since there is no deception. The Prajnaparamita mantra is said in this way: Te ata om gate gate, paragate, parasangate, bodhisoha. That's Shariputra, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, should train the profound Prajnaparamita. Then the Blessed One arose from that samadhi and praised noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, saying, Good, good, O son or noble family, thus it is, O son or noble family, thus it is. One should practice the profound Prajnaparamita just as you have taught, and all the Tathagatas will rejoice. When the Blessed One had said this, Venerable Shariputra and noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, that whole assembly of the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and Gandharvas, rejoiced and praised the words of the Blessed One. Gala jibe ne jodamba ne ngje de junga yi de jen baba lama yi bujinzi ne son kandrozo la jatzelo aga samara de jana samara be samara. Aga samara te shanara samara ya be te ata on gate gate paragate parasangate buddhiso baba gonje soji gaye tempe doji she gobo doji meba doji shewa doji dagi baje meta beje danje je den goye zo ha geren danja je je shewa da metun ne beje dan de wa dan tumba dun jin bon zon zon joji tashi de jan den da de le jo. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. Holy Lamas, I wrap the sky of your Dharma bodies in massive clouds of knowledge and love, and let them pour upon the earth of your disciples as we are ready, the shower of rain, the teachings deep and wide. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Sanje Jodan Zoji Jonan La Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Jiji Jibe Zonanje Jola Benji Zanje Dubar Jo Zanje Jodan Zoji Jonan La Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Jiji Jibe Zonanje Jola Benji Zanje Duba Jo Zanje Jodan Zaji Jonan La Janju Badu Dani Jazuji Dagi Juji Jibe Zonanji Jola Benji Zanje Duba Jo. Enthused by great compassion, you taught the Immaculate Dharma to dispel all perverted views. To you, the Buddha Gautama, I pay homage. So wonderful. It's just great that we have this opportunity. I just tickled pink, as they say, that we get to do this. And for those of you who are on TikTok, I apologize. I can't respond to the comments. Well, I'm on like a bunch of different applications now, and I'm giving a continuous teaching, but I really appreciate all of you watching. I appreciate all of you on Facebook watching, and we're on Zoom too. I appreciate everybody taking the time out of their day to listen to the Dharma, because if you make it to Buddhahood before me, then you can help me to get rid of the afflictive obstructions, the obstructions to omniscience in my mind that keep me from being the happiest person in the world that's never has to suffer again. So thank you for coming. Not that it's a race, but whoever gets there first, please help the rest of us. And this is the thing about connecting with community, connecting with Dharma, is that we can share these experiences that we have. And when we're having difficult times, some of us have, more experience that, with certain things in life, and maybe with the Dharma, we can help each other to get through difficult times. And it's because of the fact that our teachers have been so kind to give us these tools. So I want to thank you for allowing me to share with you the tools that Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche shared with me so personally for so many years, almost 25 years. That 1997 until, what was it, 2022, I think. That was quite a long time that we spent together, and we were so close. Not that Rinpoche wasn't close with others, but he and I were I can only speak from my perspective, and I've never been closer to another being in my life, and I've never known a kinder, better friend in my whole life. I've never known someone who could have such an effect on me in my life, and that was always the good effect, and that never gave me any advice that wasn't going to make me happier, more reliable, make me just more realistic in general. I was never given advice by Khyentse Geshe Wandak Rinpoche that wasn't just for the best for me. And when I went against things that he said, it was always the worst for me. Every time. He only told me like 3 things not to do that I didn't listen to in this 20-something years. And I'll tell you, every one of them became a catastrophe when I didn't listen. And I was like, he doesn't know about conventional things. He's just been a monk. But yes, he was very clear on how to guide me through my life, and everything that he told me was true thus far. Thus far, everything's been exactly dead on true. So we're going to read the foundation of all good qualities, the source of all my good first, which is our map. As Geshe Dorje Damdula says, it's our roadmap. That's not new. It's been called the guide, the map, the roadmap. The Lam Rim is our map. And there's small ones, small maps, that you better know all the roads and stuff that are within the points that are making if you want to get there. But if you do know all the roads within each of those stanzas, you'll get there. But you're probably going to need to rely on the extensive maps, like Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, which we have in 3 volumes in English, and Pabonko Rinpoche's Liberation in the Palm of Your Hand, and the extensive works of Maitreya, and the extensive works of Nagarjuna. You're going to need to rely upon these kind of greater works, Abhisamalamkara, to be able to fill in these 14 stanzas that we study. But if you can do that, these 14 stanzas contain everything that you need to know to go from wherever you are at right now. If you're a mass murderer, wherever you're at right now, to the state of perfection, and you will evolve your mind in dependence upon these teachings. No one, and I mean no one, there's no one in the universe that can't become a Buddha. No matter how they act, no matter how their mind is, inside that being is pure gold. Inside this being right here is pure gold that's just sullied. It's kind of got dirt all over it. And I just need to find that pure gold. You just need to find that pure gold. And it's obviously, if it's in there, it's not pure right now. It needs to be cleaned. We're not living in gold. We're not living in freedom from suffering and the most amount of happiness possible. But it's only because we have all the things that are covering it. Self-cherishing attitude, self-grasping ignorance, just covering it. All we have to do is remove those things that are adventitious. Adventitious means that they're not part of it. They're extra. They're added on. Our mind has this nature of just beauty, gold, but it's just a mess. It's just stained. It's got all this stuff: self-grasping ignorance, arrogance, pride, self-cherishing attitude, all this stuff, distractions, all this stuff. And when we remove it, then we can see who we really are. We can see what our potential really is, because our mind's empty of inherent existence, and we deserve better. We really deserve these teachings. We wouldn't be able to be here if we hadn't worked hard in our previous lives in some way to connect with these teachings. We wouldn't be here. We deserve this. Give yourself a break. Allow your mind to relax a little bit. See if these teachings allow that to happen. Because I think that they will, because all phenomena that are impermanent, parentheses, rely on causes. States of mind are impermanent phenomena. States of mind are things that are caused because they're results. So let's just create the ones we want instead of the ones that we don't want. And in order to do that, we have to find out what the cause of the thing we don't want is and what the cause of the thing that we want is. And that's what the Lam Rim comes to teach us. So the Pabonka Rinpoche sorts this 14 stanza text out into 4 categories. The first category is how to find a teacher, how to rely upon a teacher, et cetera, et cetera. Qualities of the teacher would be contained in this. And then we get into, once you found a teacher, what do you do? And then again, that goes from stanza number 2 up to stanza number 12. And then Pabonka Rinpoche says there's a prayer so that you have blessings, so that all the obstacles are removed and that you're all never separated from spiritual friends. And I'm sorry, from like friends that are good in terms of good influence on you. There's a prayer, a request to be able to attain all the favorable conditions for succeeding on the path and kind of blocking out anything that would be an obstacle to success. And then the final prayer, part 4, shows it's a prayer. It's kind of like saying, may I be able to never, ever separate from my perfect lamas, who I've recognized are the source of all of my good in the first stanza. I realize that everything good that can come from my mind comes from having a qualified teacher to show me exactly what that is. May I, in all my lives, may I never be separated from a teacher who can show me that, so I can go through all the grounds and paths and achieve the state of Buddhahood. So the last stanza ties back to the first stanza in that it's saying that, hey, first thing I realized is that the most important thing in the world the source of everything excellent I can become is having a good teacher. And then this ends with, hey, I'm going to need to always have a good teacher if I want to become a Buddha as quickly as possible. May I always have that. May we all always have qualified teachers. Really, make this aspiration as much as you possibly can, because there's so many teachers that are not qualified. There's so much knowledge out there that is actually just acquired ignorance that you will acquire, and we've acquired throughout our lives. Money is happiness. There's something that created all of this. These kinds of things are acquired states of mind that, anyway, we have to undo. The source of all my good is my kind Lama, my Lord. Bless me first to see that taking myself to him in the proper way is the very root of the path, and grant me then to serve and follow him with all my strength and reverence. Bless me first to realize that the excellent life of leisure I found just this once is ever so hard to find and ever so valuable. Grant me then to wish and never stop to wish that I could take its essence night and day. My body and the life in it are fleeting as the bubbles in the sea froth of a wave. Bless me first thus to recall the death that will destroy me soon, and help me find sure knowledge that after I have died, the things I've done, the white or black, and what those deeds will bring to me, follow always close behind, as certain as my shadow. Grant me then ever to be careful to stop the slightest wrongs of the many wrongs we do, and try to carry out instead each and every good of the many that we may. So in this section that we've led up to so far, we're dealing with the teachings that are shared in common with beings of small capacity, or we can say the teachings for beings of small capacity, because we're looking at this in terms of an integrated path where all of these things are foundations for the latter realizations, because we're aiming at achieving complete Buddhahood. We're not looking to just have a better next life. A small scope practitioner is just looking to have a better next life. Someone who's engaging in the teaching shared in common with beings of small scope is someone who's saying, hey, I recognize that these foundational teachings, if not realized, will not create the next teachings that create the next teachings. I have to have the causes for the results to occur. I have to have the prior stages for the final stages to occur. So there's this kind of acknowledgement of it. So the small scope, we find the practices of the finding the teacher and the life of leisure and opportunity and death and impermanence and karma and reflecting on future lives and so forth, and find out exactly how to not be born into the lower realms of cyclic existence. So we're trying to get this idea that day and night we should be doing whatever it takes to not be born as a bug or as a hungry ghost or a hell being or something like this, right? We're doing whatever it is we need to do to make sure that doesn't happen. So in our next life, we're in a good position. And for us, good position means one that'll keep us going on the train to Buddhahood. That's the kind of good position. And the good position, this kind of activity will eventually, once it's purified through emptiness, ripen into the qualities of the Buddha's, beautiful body and so forth, our beautiful bodies that we'll have. That won't be a mess like the bodies that we have now. So this is the section that deals with the teachings for beings of small capacity, and it shows us how to get our attachment to this life down. Sachen Kunga Nipo says, if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. This is what he's talking about. If you are not seeking day and night ways to get out of the lower realms in your future life, and you are just focusing on ways to be happy in this life, then if you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. So, and it says also in Lama Tsongkhapa's three principles, aspects of the path, if you have meditated thus, you do not generate admiration for an even, I'm sorry, okay, I'll link this up later. I don't have a lot of time, so I'm trying to make sure that I can link this up later to a bunch of different texts, but I'm not going to try to do this right now. So the small scope, we know that in Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, we find in the beginning, understand that there are persons of three capacities. small, medium, and great. I shall write clearly to identify their individual characteristics. So we find in Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, this first statement that's made by Atisha. And then Atisha goes on to explain exactly what each of those different pathways are, what the teaching, what exactly a small scope practitioner is, what exactly a medium scope practitioner is, what exactly a great scope practitioner is. So a small scope practitioner, according to Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, which again is the root text for the Great Treatise on the Stage of the Path to Enlightenment, which is what this 14 stanza poem encompasses all of. So this 14 stanza poem is a commentary also then on Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment. So that the first scope is know that those who by whatever means seek for themselves no more than the pleasures of cyclic existence are persons of least capacity. So you're looking to have a better next life in cyclic existence still in this capacity, and recognizing that the lower realms are plagued with humongous amounts of suffering and that you have to modify your behavior, engage in ethical behavior and engage in perfections and make stainless prayers to be able to have a human basis, because it's so difficult to achieve. So in Atisha's Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, it defines it as that. And if we say in common with, it's showing that those practices for that person are what one needs to do in order to realize the medium scope. And those practices for the medium scope person are shared in common with beings of medium capacity because they're what are needed to be done, and the small scope teachings are what are needed to be done for the person who's practicing the Mahayana, the great scope. So these are the foundational practices, if you will. These things must be dealt with, all of these topics in our mind, if we think that we're going to advance. And these are the points that are really, really emphasized in the Lam Rim teachings and over again, that there's no way you'll get compassion in the way that you need to if you don't realize the downfalls of cyclic existence that you find in the medium scope. So now we get to the medium scope, and we've actually been doing teachings in the medium scope section right now. Over the last couple of weeks. So it's blessed me to perceive all that's wrong with the seemingly good things of this life. I can never get enough of them. They cannot be trusted. They are the door to every pain I have. Grant me then to strive instead for the happiness of freedom. So upon investigation of the things in the higher realms of cyclic existence, I and you will come to find out that that is still samsara. That is still cyclic existence. You are still plagued by suffering if you are in any among the 6 realms of cyclic existence. And when you start to look at the different sufferings that you have to engage in, even in the higher realms of cyclic existence, the 8 sufferings, the suffering of birth, aging, sickness, and death, the suffering of separation from the pleasant, of meeting with the unpleasant, not getting what you want, the suffering of the appropriated aggregates, the 6 types of suffering, the suffering of uncertainty, the suffering of insatiability, the suffering of birth, the suffering of going from the high to the low, the suffering of sucking off bodies, the suffering of not having companions when you are thrust out of your body, you're all alone, again being thrust into another rebirth in samsara. You don't have those friends and companions that you were so attached to in this life to hold your hands and bring you through that process. You will have to go alone. And these are all facts of cyclic existence. And then we get into the suffering of suffering, the suffering of change, and the pervasive compounded suffering. We see that all realms of cyclic existence are plagued by these various types of suffering, at least the pervasive compounded suffering. And if we engage in non-virtue, we'll be born in the lower realms. And if we engage in just regular virtues without concentration, we'll be reborn in the desire realm. And if we engage in virtue with concentration, we'll be born into the kind of form and formless realms. But if we engage in ethics, concentration, and wisdom, then we can cut the root of cyclic existence. Then we have a foundation for what we'll need to then practice as bodhisattvas and become liberated as a bodhisattva, and that's Buddhahood. That's what that means. So grant that these pure thoughts may lead me to be watchful and to recall what I should be doing. Grant me to give the greatest care to make the vows of morality the essence of my practice. They are the root of Buddha's teachings. Nagarjuna says that the ethics is like the foundation, is like the ground of the earth that holds all things animate and inanimate. So Nagarjuna compares ethics to the foundation, like the earth of our practice. It's the ethical behavior we should be looking at, like, is a representative of the Buddha in our mind. Those ethics that we're watching with mindfulness and introspection, and we're being conscientious through our day. That's the foundation of everything that we want. Because without ethics, we won't be able to have concentration. There's no way we'll get shamatha. And without shamatha, we'll never be able to directly perceive emptiness. Impossible. We won't be able to have an inferential, valid cognition of emptiness that comes from a union of calm abiding and special insight. We'll never get calm abiding. So we'll never even get to the path of preparation. We could never do anything without this solid ethics as the foundation, then the concentration and the wisdom. And the three highest higher trainings are taught in the medium scope. This is the way out. This is the pathway that one engages in order to be relieved of cyclic existence. In the medium scope, one's looking just to get out of samsara, not looking for Buddhahood, just looking to get out of samsara for oneself alone, sometimes called Hinayana, sometimes called Theravada, and sometimes called the individual liberation vehicle. There's a lot of names given to it. The Pali tradition, another name given to it. But you have to practice the three highest higher trainings of ethics, concentration, and wisdom to cut the root of cyclic existence. And the ethics being the foundation of all of that. And then we get into the medium scope. And so there's something that I wanted to read, because I think that we've gone over the medium scope enough. And I think that the medium scope is where we find the Four Noble Truths: the truth of suffering, the truth of origin, the truth of cessation, and the truth of path. And we find that we need to identify what suffering is. Well, I just did 8 sufferings, 6 sufferings, 3 sufferings. And really, it's the pervasive compounded suffering. It's being thrust into a set of aggregates among the 4 or 5 aggregates, being thrust life after life after life without any choice, beyond our control, over and over again into these contaminated aggregates, this contaminated basis that will be thrust into another contaminated basis if we don't fix what's forcefully throwing us into these contaminated bases out of our control. And lack of freedom is suffering. So what is it that's throwing us into these contaminated bases over and over and over again? Contaminated karmas, afflictions, they're active seeds. And right at the base of all of it is the self-grasping ignorance that's driving all of it. The self-grasping ignorance is driving this forced rebirth, forced birth into a set of aggregates over and over and over again, just forcing us over and over and over again. So it's in this scope where we start to figure out, how do we get rid of that which is making us not be free? Lack of freedom is suffering. You're being forced. Do you want to be forced to do something? Well, your ignorance is forcing you to be born again and again and again into states of suffering. And it won't end until the ignorance ends. It's the only way it'll end. So in this section, we learn about the Four Noble Truths. We learn about identifying suffering. We learn about learn about the origin of suffering. What is it? The self-grasping ignorance that gives rise to inappropriate attention, that gives rise to the coarse afflictions, that give rise to contaminated karmas, that give rise to cyclic existence. And if the cooperating condition of the afflictions isn't there, even if there's contaminated karmas still, if there's no craving, there's no rebirth. So it's the self-grasping ignorance, the afflictive obstructions that have to be removed. And as soon as we remove those, that which gives rise to perpetual birth and cyclic existence isn't there. The cooperating condition for the seed of karma to grow isn't there. So this is the key. All those seeds go away when you're a Buddha. So the measure of the determination to be free. So we abandon the origin of suffering. We want to achieve a cessation. And in order to do it, we want to rely upon a path, the path of the three highest higher trainings. We identify that cyclic existence has nothing in it for us. It's just a horrible place that's riddled with a lack of freedom. And we want to develop this idea that day and night, we want to seek transcendent liberation. So in Lama Tsongkhapa's three principal aspects of the path, now I want to go to it. It says this: homage to the foremost holy lamas. I will explain as well as I can the essential meaning of all the conqueror's scriptures, the path praised by the excellent conqueror's children, and the port for the fortunate ones desiring liberation. Renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness. Whoever are not attached to the pleasures of mundane existence, whoever strive in order to make leisure and fortune worthwhile, whoever are inclined to the path pleasing to the Buddha, those fortunate ones should listen with a clear mind. Without a complete thought definitely to leave cyclic existence, there's no way to stop seeking pleasurable effects in the ocean of existence. Also, craving cyclic existence thoroughly binds the embodied. Craving. So if you get rid of the afflictions, you don't have cyclic existence. So we look at the 12 links of dependent origination, the 8th link, craving, 9th link, grasping, 10th link, potential existence, 11th link, birth. If you collapse the links, the other links don't happen, just like it says in the Rice Seedling Sutra. If you remove this, this isn't there. You remove that link's not there. You remove the ignorance, the karma's not there. The contaminated karma's not there to produce. You won't produce contaminated karma. Also, craving cyclic existence thoroughly binds the embodied. Therefore, in the beginning, the determination to leave cyclic existence must be sought. So we're seeking something we don't have. We think, oh, we want to become a Buddha for the sake of all sentient beings. We don't even want to leave cyclic existence when we're honest with ourselves. We love this. We haven't convinced ourselves this is a burning house we need to get out of. Leisure and fortune are difficult to find, and life has no duration. Through familiarity with this, emphasis on the appearances of this life are reversed. So we start to see in the three principal aspects of the path the small scope. Emphasis on the appearances of this life is reversed. If you're attached to this life, you're not a spiritual practitioner. If you think again and again about deeds and their inevitable effects and the sufferings of cyclic existence, the emphasis on the appearances of future lives will be reversed. So we see the small scope. I was going to try to point this out earlier, and I just didn't find it quick enough and didn't want to waste more time. But we see the small scope represented on emphasis on the appearances of this life are reversed. And then if we think again and again and again about the 8 sufferings, the 6 sufferings, and the 3 sufferings, emphasis for future lives, emphasis on wanting to be born in cyclic existence is reversed. Saying, oh, I just want a higher realm rebirth. I want to do this one more time. Wow, this isn't good. I came to Buddhism because there was something dissatisfying in my mind. There was something that hurt. Why would I want to do that again if I showed up somewhere where I was not happy, looking for a way to be happy? If it's shown to me, why don't I just do that? If, having meditated thus, you do not generate admiration, here's the definition of renunciation: whether or not you really want to get out of samsara. That's what renunciation is. I don't want to suffer anymore. Day and night, I'm going to figure out how to not suffer anymore. You're renouncing suffering. You're not renouncing happiness. You're renouncing unhappy states. Who wouldn't want to do that? I don't want to be unhappy anymore. Well, if, having meditated on thus, you do not generate admiration, even for an instant, for the prosperity of cyclic existence. That's a high bar. An instant. Someone who has renunciation doesn't have an instant of, oh, this stuff's great. There's not an instant. And if you don't have renunciation, you can't become a bodhisattva. You can't get bodhicitta. We run around saying, oh, they're like a bodhisattva. They're like someone who day and night doesn't have an instant of admiration for the prosperity of cyclic existence, so much so that they detest it and look at others and say, oh, my, and get compassion? That's tough. And if an attitude seeking liberation arises day and night and not an instant of admiration is generated, then the thought definitely to leave cyclic existence is generated. Then renunciation is there. So in here, in the Lamrim Chemo, in the great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, that was the three principal aspects of the path by Lama Tsongkhapa. In Lord Atisha says in the Lamp for the Path to Enlightenment, his definition, we should always go back to that and be able to, find all of these things. His definition of a person of medium capacity, it says, those who through their those who seek peace for themselves alone. I want out by myself. I just got to get out of this. I want to be out of samsara. Turning away from worldly pleasures and avoiding destructive actions are said to be persons of middling capacity. So this is a person who day and night wants to get out of cyclic existence. So here in Lama Tsongkhapa's great treatise on the stage of the path to enlightenment, and if it goes over just a minute or two, that I'm sorry, I want to finish the medium scope tonight. So the measure of the determination to be free. You must understand in detail the characteristics of cyclic existence, both by way of suffering and its origin, which we've talked about, and by way of the 12 factors of dependent arising. So the 12 factors of dependent arising: ignorance, karma or action, consciousness, name and form, 6 sources, contact, feeling, craving, grasping, potential existence, birth, aging, and death. And we see that it's a maximum 3 lifetimes to complete all of those links, and could be done in 2. Those links that we're just keep going around and around and around in cyclic existence. The Buddha shows us why we're born in cyclic existence by way of explaining the 12 links. So the expansive explanation of the truth of origin is the 12 links of dependent origination, according to Tsongkhapa in this text. And the abbreviated way is by saying the origin of suffering is karma and afflictions, and then showing that the cooperating condition of afflictions is necessary in order for rebirth to take place, and that if you have afflictions, you will generate more karma, no matter what, contaminated karma. And if you don't have afflictions, even if you have contaminated karma, you will not take a rebirth. So these are some facts. Once you understand these characteristics, you will develop a desire to abandon and to quell suffering and its origin. So once you're really clear on this, you're going to say, okay, I want to get rid of what causes suffering. I got to get rid of it. I don't like suffering. Suffering's a result. If I get rid of the cause of the result can't happen. I must get rid of suffering. I must get rid of the cause of suffering. At this point, although you may have a simple determination to be free, you shouldn't be satisfied with merely this. So now, like, you have this, feels kind of sweet, just got into Buddhism. It's been 6 months or so. Really gung-ho. You know how you get gung-ho about stuff for a period of time? It could be anything. Yeah, hobby, really gung-ho. And then it's like, I'm just not going to do that anymore. The I'm just not going to do that anymore can occur if your gung-ho isn't more than a correctly assuming consciousness. If it isn't just something that you're like, that sounds good. And you just happen to be right. You just happen to have thrown a dart, not looking, and hit the target. That's not going to be enough. It says, once we are certain that living in the 3 levels of cyclic existence, desire realm, formless realm, impermanence's blazing fire, just going to keep circling. It's not like you get to stay in any of those spots, even if some of them are pretty cool. Formless realm concentration is pretty cool, but you won't stay there. Thrust into hell another time in the future. Once we're certain that living in the 3 levels of cyclic existence, impermanence's blazing fire is like entering a burning house, we want to escape it. That's the feeling we should have about cyclic existence. We're in a burning house, we want to escape. Just as when a chance arises for prisoners to flee from a prison, just like we were sentenced to death and had a way out, we would run. We would run. We were just had that door wide open and there was no, no one in the tower that was going to shoot us. We would just run as fast as we could. Even if maybe we'd just run jagged. If we thought maybe they were shooting, we'd want out so badly. We do anything to escape. Then progressively, so it says, develop an attitude about cyclic existence like those who feel aversion for the confinement in a blazing house or a prison. This is how we should look at this thing we love so much. This contaminated happiness we experience that's like a bait that keeps us in the burning house, that just keeps us in there eating away. Then we burn up and then we're in another burning house and we're just relaxed because we have a little bait that we thought, oh, this is all we were looking for. And little did we know what the problem with bait is, that it's poison or it's going to just trap us. Bait's usually delicious though. So we want to escape from the blazing house, the prison, then progressively increase this feeling of aversion and desire to escape. So it's saying now you should have this feeling that you're in this blazing house and you have to get out. Make it more. Tsongkhapa is saying. Make it more. Want to get out more. I don't even know what that looks like. You're in a blazing house and you're looking for a door, wanting out. Make it more. Make it firmer in your mind than that. Don't be satisfied with partiality. That's wild to me. And then it says, if your ability to see the undesirability of true origin, the causes of cyclic existence, is superficial. So if it's just like words or superficial, or you don't really meditate, you don't really practice, you just listen here and there, and it's cute, something interesting, something to pass your time. If you're not really applying these teachings, if they're just superficial teachings, then your search for liberation, the cessation of suffering and its origin, it'll be the same, superficial, won't work. Likewise, your desire to be able to develop either the compassion that cannot bear to see the suffering of living beings in cyclic existence, or the uncontrived spirit of unsurpassed enlightenment that instills you with that strength, you'll never be able to get it. You're in a burning house. What happens, I had this kind of thought today that, okay, renunciation is I'm in a burning house and I want to get out. I've realized everything about this house that I'm in is nothing for me. It's just a place that's ablaze and I must get out. I'm in a prison and I must get out. Until you recognize that that's what a sentient being goes through, you're a sentient being, I go through, there's no possible way you're going to then look at every other sentient being in the universe and say, they're in a burning house. I must get them out. I'm in a burning house. I must get out. And then your mind turns towards others and compassion takes over and says, wow, they're suffering. Wow, they're unhappy too. They're in a burning house. They're in a house that's just like mine burning. And I know how to get out of my burning house. How could you possibly generate a desire to help them out of a burning house that you don't know anything about? If you don't know about your burning house, you think you know about your neighbor's burning house? You think it feels hot if your neighbor's house is on fire in your living room? It's just different. You have to realize these things for yourself first, and then be able to build on that foundation. You won't be able to, it says right here, you won't be able to get compassion. You won't get bodhicitta. You won't have anything that instills the strength in you to do those things if you haven't developed this. Now you think you're in a fire house, make it more. Make you see it as even worse. Wow. It says, hence, your understanding of the Mahayana will be merely intellectual. If you don't realize what we would say the lower teachings, the Theravada, like some people would have some ego and not realize that all of the instructions are instructions to get you to Buddhahood, would say there was something lower the Buddha taught. The lower Buddha never taught something lower. He taught the highest thing that person could understand to get them to Buddhahood as quick as possible. The Buddha never taught lower things. We're just, again, misperceiving what the Buddha came here to do. So that's it for tonight. That's where I wanted to get through. I did it. And I was going to read the whole source, but I didn't. So I guess I didn't fulfill all of my little plans and designs, but we did pretty well tonight. So I want to thank you all for your listening and coming week after week to, be able to help support me and in my path. And I really, really appreciate that because I know that that's what I'm doing here. I don't have any kind of mixed up notion that, oh boy, okay, it's Thursday night. I got to get on to help these poor folks. There's no notion whatsoever in my mind like that. My mind is like, wow, I need to transform. And the way that I can do this, one of the ways I can do this is by explaining these things and thinking about them before the teaching. And while the teaching's going on, thinking about other things that, I can then go look up when I get out of this class or when I wake up at the crack of dawn to open my books. I can say, okay, last night I was talking about this and, I wanted to relate it to that or this or that, and I wasn't able to do it. And what that means is that my mind isn't evolved enough. If I'm not able to do it, I'm not seeing some connection myself that is allowing me to get just a step further towards the path of freedom from suffering, towards the result of freedom from suffering and complete happiness that I've never known, ever in my whole life. So with that being said, I have to find the concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. As I told you last week, my books all fell apart. So right here, it wasn't so painful. The concluding mandala offering and dedication prayer. The fundamental ground is scented with incense and strewn with flowers, adorned with Mount Meru, the four continents, the sun, and the moon. I imagine this is a Buddha land and offer it. May all sentient beings enjoy this pure realm. I dedicate whatever virtues I have collected for the benefit of the teachings and of all sentient beings, and in particular for the essential teachings of Venerable Zandrapa to shine forever. I send forth this jeweled mandala to you, precious Guru. Any mistakes that I've made were not on purpose. They were just out of ignorance. May they be purified by the mantra of Vajrasattva. Om Benza Sato Samaya Mani Balai Benza Sato Zeno Vajra Dede Meva Zudugai Meva Zubugai Meva Anurada Meva Vazavazeri Meva Rajasava Kamazuji Megidam Chian Guru Ha Bhagavanzava Tata Kata Benza Mamunga Benza Baba Maha Samaya Safa Ahum Ve. May we always be protected by Palden Lama, the wrathful emanation of Tara. Beautiful Tara behind me, this beautiful Tanka. Thank you very much, Venerable Geshe, Venerable Lozandonya. For bringing that back from India for Lori right before her surgery. That was very, very kind and very beautiful Tanka. So may we always be protected by Palden Lama. Jo Rama, Jojo Rama, Tunjo Kala Rachimo, Ramo Achadacha, Tunjo Rula Rula Hungjo. Okay, and we'll read the dedication prayers. I dedicate all this virtue to emulate the knowledge of the hero Manjushri and likewise Samantabhadra as well. With whatever dedication is praised as supreme by all the conquerors who traverse the three times, I also dedicate all my roots of virtue for the sake of auspicious deeds. May the supreme jewel bodhicitta that has not arisen arise and grow, and may that which has arisen not diminish, but increase forevermore. In the heavenly realm of Tibet, surrounded by a chain of snow mountains, you are the source of all benefit and help for beings. All powerful, Tenzin Losang Gyatso, Chenrezig, Tenzin Gyatso, may you stay until samsara's end. And a prayer of supplication to Namgyo Khyentse Geshe Wandok Rinpoche, our root teacher, and also we'll think about Geshe Lobsang Gompo and think about Jeffrey Hopkins coming back and helping us. Coming back to help, please. A complex yogi poses as a simple monk. Homage to Kensei Geshe Wandok Rinpoche, our precious spiritual friend who is inseparable from Aryatara. I fully prostrate, covering as many atoms of the earth as possible to your pure body, speech, mind, and enlightened activities. I offer to you drinking water, bathing water, flowers, incense, candles, scented water, food, and music purified by Om, 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 Om. The rarity of having 1 million wish-fulfilling gems is a common occurrence, compared to meeting with a holy teacher like you who placed the complete path to Buddhahood in our childlike hands. Just like Atisha who came to Tibet with a lamp to dispel the darkness of ignorance, you, kind abbot, arrived in the West with a lineage purer than a diamond and begged us never to be satisfied with partial instructions. The teachings of the extensive deeds and profound view lineages flowed from your lips like nectar for our ears that elucidating the teachings for beings of three capacities. Now that sound has stopped. All composite things are impermanent. You told us that all of your teachers passed away and understood this sadness, entreating us to continue our studies. The Buddha does not wash away the negativities of beings, nor does he remove their miseries by his hands. His spiritual realizations are not transferred to them. It is by teaching the truth of suchness that beings are liberated. We are not prepared to take this difficult journey to the highest goodness of Buddhahood without your continued guidance. Sadness in our hearts would be too overwhelming. May we swiftly return to this world and take care of us in all of our lives, wherever we may be, never leaving our hearts and crowns. May all sentient beings perfectly realize renunciation, bodhicitta, and the correct view of emptiness, so they know who you really are. Thank you, everyone. I hope your mind is virtuous throughout this week and that you practice these teachings and apply them to your lives because they work. Thanks.